News Day continues here on One News Now. I'm Dani Laurel. Earnings of the country's banking industry soared in 2022. That's off the back of higher interest income and trading gains. Data from the Bangko Sentral show that banks' cumulative loans, or income rather, rose to 309 billion pesos from 224.7 billion pesos in 2021. Earnings growth was driven by a year-on-year increase of nearly 13% in net interest income to more than 746 billion pesos. Non-interest income grew by 24%, while trading income surged 70%. Now, earnings from fees and commissions also went up on an annual basis. Meanwhile, factory production expanded at its slowest pace in 3 months last December. Preliminary data from the PSA's monthly integrated survey of selected industries showed that manufacturing grew by 4.8% year-on-year in December. Factory output is measured by the volume of production index. December growth slowed from the 5.9% expansion in November and is also the slowest uptick since September of 2022. Economists said the slower growth was mainly due to seasonal factors and a decline in trade performance. President Bongbong Marcos and Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida witnessed the signing of 7 key deals, including loan agreements for major railway projects here in the Philippines. President Marcos also met with executives of Japanese companies in his ongoing working visit in Japan. Mon Gualvez with the details.
President Bongbong Marcos and Japan Prime Minister Fumio Kishida treats their first ever bilateral meeting in Tokyo as a historical breakthrough. That's because it coincided with the 50th anniversary of Japan-ASEAN friendship and cooperation. 7 agreements have been signed between the two nations.
President Marcos's visit to Japan gives us a renewed momentum for our two nations to further upgrade our bilateral partnerships we have seen in many areas over the recent years to an even higher dimension, and for us to make further contributions to the peace and stability of the region and the world.
The future of our relationship remains full of promise as we continue to deepen and expand our engagements across a wide range of mutually beneficial cooperation.
4 of the agreements are for the North-South Commuter Railway Extension Project, where 2 are loan agreements for the said project. They also signed an umbrella term of reference for a possible humanitarian assistance and disaster relief cooperation of the two nations, and memoranda of cooperation in the sectors of agriculture and information and communications technology. DFA Secretary Enrique Manalo, Finance Secretary Benjamin Diokno, and Agriculture Undersecretary Domingo Panganiban signed the contracts on behalf of the Philippines. Security has also been discussed, although there were no talks of a possible Visiting Forces Agreement or VFA between the Philippines and Japan.
I explained to the President such matters as Japan's national security strategy, and the President welcomed Japan's commitment to the free and open international order based on rules.
The Prime Minister and I have agreed to cooperate even more closely in areas of economic cooperation, security and defense cooperation, maritime security and safety, healthcare mechanisms, environmental commitments, and people-to-people exchanges.
The President earlier mentioned he's willing to discuss VFA if it will be brought up during the bilateral meeting. Yesterday, the President also sat on a roundtable meeting along with top executives of semiconductor, electronics, and wiring harness companies in Tokyo. The Philippine delegation was able to secure investment pledges that could create more than 10,000 jobs in the Philippines. The amount would be unveiled during the signing of letters of intent later today. Meanwhile, in the roundtable meeting with tourism stakeholders, the President highlighted how despite the pandemic, Japan was fourth in tourist arrivals in the Philippines.
But more than just being a major economic driver, we see the tourism industry to be a great pillar that fosters a deep love and pride of our country.
Japan is the only country that has a bilateral free trade agreement or FTA with the Philippines, the Philippine-Japan Economic Partnership Agreement or PJEPA. In 2021, Japan was the second biggest trading partner of the country. Meanwhile, around 4 p.m. yesterday here in Japan, President Marcos and First Lady Liza Araneta Marcos paid a courtesy visit to Emperor Naruhito and Empress Masako in Imperial Palace. This ended with the president inviting the emperor to visit the Philippines as well. Today, the president will be attending more meetings with businessmen to help boost investment pledges for the Philippines. For News 5, Mon Gualvez, we are One News.
So circling back to the banks, what is the outlook on that sector with interest rates not having any sign of abating? Here to chat about that and more, we have with us Japheth Tantiangco, Research Manager over at PhilStocks. Good morning, Japheth.
Good morning, Ma'am Danny. Thank you very much for inviting me.
Japheth, let's kick off with that bank, net income surge there. So it looks like they seem to have benefited from these higher interest rates. But did this not eat into loan growth? I imagine that, less people or more people are hesitant to get into loans. Why this sudden net income surge?
Well, with respect to the loan growth, if you're going to look at least if you're going to focus on the universal and commercial banking sector, the loan growth there in 2022 was up by more than 13%. So far, despite the rise in interest rates, many are still borrowing, and this borrowing is hinged on confidence towards the local economy's strength.
Okay.
I mean, if you're going to look at the banking sector's performance, the two main what I can say is the two main determinants of its performance is, of course, interest rate levels, and number two is confidence towards the local economy's strength. If interest rate levels are high, just like what we're seeing right now, that's going to be beneficial for banks because it's going to boost their net interest margins. It's going to boost their interest incomes. But another question there is, will the local economy absorb such high level of interest rates? So far, what we've seen in 2022 is they did.
Okay.
And that is, as mentioned, that is because of confidence towards the economy's outlook, that we are still going to we're going to continue with our growth momentum. Though we're going to be experiencing a growth slowdown this 2023 amid headwinds, but nonetheless we're going to grow still. So that was the story of the banks in 2022. For this 2023, there's still a presence of high interest rate levels, so that's positive for them. But the one in question right now is confidence.
Correct.
Yes, the economy is going to grow still, but the question right now is the extent of the slowdown of its growth. Given that right now inflation is still is very persistent, and inflation is very persistent, and of course we have these lingering problems offshore. So.
Okay.
These are things that could affect banking performance this year. But for 2022, it was good.
All right, now let's take a look at the year to date. No, it's jumped by 10.8%. At least the counter. Does this still have room to run, like you mentioned, with all of these risks on the table?
Well, for now, we are still optimistic with the banking sector. We're still optimistic. Given the growth outlook. But again, as I've mentioned, the risk here is if we are gonna grow slower than what is projected.
Okay.
At least on our end, for now, we are projecting the local economy to grow by 5.6 to 6% for 2023. This is despite the challenges that we have. And I believe that this growth is enough to compel businessmen to continue borrowing for their capital expenditure plans. So this in turn is going to keep. It's going to result that the high interest rate levels could result in a growth, in a slowdown in loan growth. But nonetheless, loans are still going to grow amid confidence towards local economic prospects. The problem will arise if, as mentioned, growth will come in slower than expectations. Because if growth comes in slower than expectations, then it's gonna weigh on confidence, and if it weighs on confidence, then that's going to weaken borrowing, and if it weakens borrowing, then that's going to pull the banking sector down. But for now, we still expect confidence to be there, though challenged, but it's still gonna be there, and that in turn is going to keep on the loan growth within the banks.
Do you have favorites to pick up in the banking space? Do we stick to the big guns, or this digitalization play for, let's say, the second liners is still interesting for you?
Well, they all have interesting stories. I mean, with digitization, with the technological progress, that's going to result to more efficiency on the part of the banking's performance. So it's going to it's going to result into higher operational efficiency. So that's favorable. So we can also look at those. But for now, we are still more into the big banks, particularly the big three in the index, BDO, Metrobank, and BPI. So these are still the banks that we are looking into. But we are, as mentioned, we are not discounting those which are going into digitization, as it may boost their operational efficiency.
All right, let's take a look at how we are opening this morning in the index. And while we take a look at that, I also wanted to discuss some deletions here on the MSCI front, the global index. So you've got ASEN or AC Energy deleted, and you've got Globe deleted by the end of the month. What does this tell you? Is this just something routine? Was this expected at all, or is this related to I don't know, them being Ayala stocks, them having focus on specific sectors?
Well, with respect to that, we will still have to investigate why the two got deleted from the MSCI. But as far as we can see right now, given their deletion, there's a negative effect on sentiment with respect to the stocks. I mean, Globe and ASEN have both declined, are so far declining today because of this deletion. However, we should take note that these are more into sentiment. If you're going to look at fundamentals, the two remain strong, especially since they belong to robust sectors, Globe in the telecommunications and ASEN in the energy industry, especially ASEN, given that energy sector is going to is expected to outperform this year, given that the continuous recovery of the economy is expected to lead to stronger electricity demand, whereas supply remains tight, so energy prices are expected to remain high. It's going to benefit ASEN. So the two, fundamentally, the two are still seen as robust. Thus, the fall that we see right now due to the negative sentiment caused by the MSCI deletion, we see it as an opportunity for investors to pick up the shares.
Okay, so interestingly enough, as you mentioned, Globe down by 4.2%. I'll pull out ASEN here for our viewers here. That's down by 21 centavos, more than 3% in the past 3 days. Now let's take a look at Axelum, Jafet, which of course was part of it was bought by MPIC, and then the trading halt was a little bit later on, so there was still some trading when this was announced. It slumped by as much as 5%, and then people started picking it up, at least when it started trading again. What's in the minds of investors at this point for this stock, and how do you view this stock now that it's partly owned by MPIC?
Well, I believe what investors are pricing in right now is the prospects that MPIC brings to the table of Axelum. Axelum getting connected to a huge conglomerate like this, it opens up, many possibilities for them. Of course, there's also the advantages that they could get due to the synergy, the connection between MPIC and Axelum. So this could lead to synergies, which in turn could boost the performance, the operations, and the financial performance of Axelum. However, there is still cautiousness on the part of investors. While yes, this is seen to be a big move, but by the end of the day, Axelum falls under the consumer segment. And we all know right now that the consumer segment is taking heavy hit because of high inflation. So plus Axelum is also exposed in the export market, which is currently also challenged right now. So investors are balancing the risks that Axelum is facing, at the same time the prospects that is being brought by it being connected to NPIs.
All right, and like you mentioned here, no, a bit of a bump up. It's trading at 3 pesos 39 centavos, but still a bit far from the 5 peso IPO price it had in a pre-pandemic. Thank you so much for all of those insights, Japhet and Tiago of PhilStocks.
You're very much welcome, Ma'am Dan.
For more updates, visit News 5, the Philippine Star, and Business World online. Visit our website, onenews.ph, for more in-depth analysis. You can also catch One News on the Signal Play app. Register for a free account now. That's at www.signalplay.com and stream One News live anytime, anywhere. I'm Danny Laurel. Join us again at 11:15 a.m. We are One News, all sides, all the time.